and welcome to Zuzu's House of Cats Presents. I'm Ellie Trier, your host, and on this podcast I love to talk to my fellow artists and creative people about the work that they make. We dive deep into the creative process and cover everything from why they make what they make to how they actually get everything done, and everything in between. This week, my guest is the amazing Tracy Verdugo. Tracy describes herself as an inspiration instigator, prolific painter and lover of the written word, smitten traveller and soaker up of all that is beautiful. She's an incredible artist, a teacher, and just a vibrant spreader of joy across the world. She's probably best known for her Paint Mojo creative workshop, and she teaches this and other creative workshops all over the globe and reminds her students of the wonder that already resides within them. I'm so honoured to have Tracy on the podcast today. Let's jump in. Welcome back, everybody, and welcome, Tracy. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Ellie. I'm so excited we're finally getting the chance to chat.
I know. We were just saying before we started recording, Tracy and I have known each other for about a decade, and this is actually the first time that we've had a face-to-face conversation, so it's very exciting for both of us.
It's exciting, yes.
Tracy, my love, for the people who don't know you, would you give us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Okay. Well, I'm an Australian artist and I have a whole bunch of online classes and I teach retreats and workshops here in our little town of 1,000 people, but also out in the world as well, all over the world actually. And so I love to really encourage women especially to kind of grow their creative confidence. I find that I meet a lot of women who are similar age to me. Children are kind of growing up or grown up and they're ready to kind of do something else with their lives and to maybe even kind of reignite a spark that's been with them for a long time, but kind of not being able to shine as much as they'd like to.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Creativity is such a powerful tool for sort of self-discovery and I find it really therapeutic. Like it's the best anti-anxiety thing I've ever done. So I love that you're kind of bringing that to more people.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because when I first started teaching, I actually only started painting when I was 33. So that was right at the turn of the century. And I immediately started to come home and I gathered the neighbourhood children when I was going to my first art class. And whatever I had learned that day, I would come home and like just teach it in kids speak, at their level because I was so excited about everything that I was learning. And so I did 12 years of teaching kids art classes after school. And those kids taught me a lot as well about play and curiosity, wonder, imagination, and I took all of that with me when I started to create the workshops and retreats for adults.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's so cool. I really think kids art is just the best. Like it's so pure and exciting and fresh. Like I love that you've brought that into your teaching. Mm-hmm. So you said that you didn't start painting until you were 33. Like tell us that story. How did you get started?
Yeah, it was funny because growing up, I was, my family wasn't really into the arts or anything. Working class Australian family, probably didn't have time to kind of explore anything like that. And my brother, though, was a natural, he could draw really well. And it seemed to me that he was like 6 years younger than me, but from the time I can remember, he could just sketch these amazing sketches. And so Mum would kind of refer to him as Jason's the artist and Tracy's the smart one. She gets the good grades and he can draw well. And it wasn't until a lot later that I realized that the reason he was a good artist was because he had spent hours and hours and hours and hours copying cartoon comics, sketching, honing his skills. And I didn't see that when I was a kid. I just really thought that he was born into it and I wasn't. And so yeah, I dabbled a lot in crafty things throughout my late teens, early 20s, mid 20s. But for whatever reason, I had art set on a pedestal. Some people get to do that and most of us don't. And so that was my kind of core belief. And it wasn't until I saw an ad in the newspaper and girls were at the time, Santana was in school, Sienna was going to preschool one day a week. And I saw an ad for a local art class on the day that Sienna was in preschool, my only day that I had free. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to go. I'm terrified, but I'm going to go and see if I can do this, because I don't know if you felt that in your life, but before you start to paint, you look at other people who do it and you're like, this is a magic trick. This is like something amazing. And
Yeah.
I wish I could do that. How, And so, yeah, I started going to this once a week art class, and within 3 weeks, my mind was blown. It was just total 360 on everything I believed about who can paint and who can't paint. I mean, not that I could paint straight away, but I just could see the world differently, I guess.
That's so funny. That mirrors my own experience, like, so completely, to the point where I also have a younger brother who is 6 years younger than me and incredibly talented, and I grew up hearing, like, Casper's the artistic one, he's the talented one, Ellie's the organized one, Ellie's the clever one. Like,
that's amazing.
That's so funny. What a coincidence.
So funny. I'm not the organized one,
I have one of those weird brains where I can do the creative arty stuff, but I also have a very kind of like logical, analytical streak as well. I think it's probably the autism,
Right, that's fantastic.
Serves me well.
Yeah.
So I love that. So you went to this art class and your mind was blown wide open, and you got this kind of confirmation that you could do this as well. Like, what happened next? Where did you go from there?
Yeah, so as I said, I pretty much would come home after that art class and gather the neighborhood kids. And so that was 12 years I went to the art class for about a year. And the other thing that I did was I got involved with a local arts festival. So we live in a very small area in Australia, and in the winter at the time, it was really busy during summer, but the tourists would just stop coming in the winter. So a group of locals got together and decided to have a winter festival to try and bring more tourism in. And so about 2 years after I started that art class, I put my hand up to have a solo exhibition at the Winter Arts Festival. I tend to jump in before I think about things too much. And so then I was like, oh my gosh, now I'm committed. And now I have to come up with like 20 paintings to put into this exhibition. And I did, and it was a great success. And it built my confidence. And then I continued on every 2 years when they ran the festival to have exhibitions in town or at our home as well. And so then, it just kind of built from there. And I think it was about 2012 that I started doing my first workshops for adults.
Wow. And do you, because I know that you're very, very much online. You do stuff all over the world with all sorts of people. Did you do workshops with kind of people in your hometown as well? Was that a natural progression from teaching the kids?
Yeah. So I basically what happened was that I was teaching the kids. I was working in special ed at the same time during the day, and working with a class of boys on the autism spectrum, and I had these grand ideas that I wanted to kind of overhaul the Australian education system and bring more creativity into it, and I'm a big thinker.
I love that.
And, and then I got into the system and I got a full-time job there, and I realized, oh my gosh, it's really hard to make big changes in the education, in the government department, basically. And so I worked there for 7 years, and then I realized it was time for me to do something else. And I sadly said goodbye to all the kids and the staff that I worked with. And what happened was that our youngest daughter at the time was going to do an exchange in California. So she was in grade 10. And our eldest daughter was moving out of home at 18 to go to university. And I suddenly had this just pit in my stomach that it was just way too soon for me to have an empty nest. And it was just like, oh my gosh, I'm not ready for this. And so I started to think of a way that I could go to America to at least spend some time with Sienna while she was on her exchange over there, because she'd be staying with family. And I started to think, well, maybe I could put together a workshop, and maybe I could approach someone in America and see if I could come and teach. And so I started researching art retreats and reaching out to different ones. At the time, I also had a community on Facebook that I had began, which had about 5,000 people in it. That was back in like 2011. And long story short, I got accepted to teach at an art retreat in California. And as soon as I got onto my group on Facebook and said, oh my gosh, I'm coming to America, I'm going to do this retreat, blah, blah, blah. I had at least 12 of my friends online reach out to me and say, well, honey, if you're going to come all this way, you need to come to Texas, you need to come to Florida, you need to come to... And so within about a week, I had a 12-week tour lined up in the States. I had never traveled by myself before. The first time solo travel. And so I took my art kit and my 2 suitcases and jumped on a plane and did, I think it was like 9 states over 12 weeks, flying somewhere different just about every week, meeting amazing people, staying with beautiful hosts. And that was the beginning.
That's amazing. What a bold move. I love that energy, like just jumping in and going for it. That's amazing.
Yeah. It's I'm quite spontaneous. I think it's a superpower.
Absolutely. I'm so on board with that kind of just like jump in and see what happens and figure it out as you go along. Like I think it's magic energy. I love that. And that's kind of everything just...
Yeah, it just flowed from there. And you were talking about art as healing before. And honestly, when I first started doing this, I had no idea. I thought I was just going to teach art classes. I had a kind of a program worked out, but it would veer off in different directions. And then I realized pretty soon that there was such a psychological element to what people would bring with them to the workshops. And you could really see problems or issues that people were having in their life mirrored in their approach to art or their fears around making art. And I got so interested in that. And that's really become, even though I'm not an art therapist, I'm not qualified in that way, it just feels like, and it's not even me doing it, it's the groups that come together and it's the community that we form and it's the conversations that we have and it's the songs we sing while we're painting and it's the laughter and the tears and it's all of it, it's really, really beautiful.
Yeah, that's kind of the stuff of life, isn't it? It's all like a microcosm of something bigger.
Yeah.
So to change direction a little bit, you seem to be just incredibly prolific. Like I'm always seeing like new stuff from you, new art, new classes, new. And is that actually the case? Like, is that actually, are you that prolific or is it just you're expert at repurposing things? Like I see you everywhere and there's always something like going on.
I think it's a bit of both. I think I'm prolific in spurts. And so I might have weeks and weeks out of the studio. And a lot of the time it's because I'm working on something else, or sometimes I'm not well or whatever. And so, but I have become very good at repurposing also. And so, I think it's a bit of both. When I'm feeling good and I'm in the studio and I have the time and I'm not focused on other business stuff, then I can really get into a flow. But as I said, there might be, yesterday was the first day I got in the studio in 3 weeks since we've been back from Europe. But today I was in there again and I'm like, yeah, this is so good. It's a bit of everything. I look back and I see everything, all the paintings I've painted. So I guess I am prolific, but I'm not in there all the time.
I really love that. And I think that's a really important thing to sort of to pull out is that being a full-time artist is not about being in the studio all day, every day. Like we would love to be in the studio all day, every day. But the truth is like there's often long periods of time where you're focused on other things. You're making classes or you're rebuilding my website at the moment, which is like, but like there's all sorts of other stuff that goes into running a business. And I think it's really important to kind of talk about that and let people know, anyone who's kind of looking at this and going, oh, I'd love to do this full time. I'd love to be a full-time artist. Like, I don't think I've made less art since I became a full-time artist.
Right. Exactly. And, and there's the real, I don't know, one of the things that I deal with the most at the moment is just like just scrolling too much, jumping online, getting to social media, looking at things on Instagram, looking at all it's procrastination basically. And it's really, really hard. So I'm trying to get better about setting timers and like making, giving myself blocks of time, but then I'll often put the timer on for another 10 and another 10. But, there's some days 2 hours, it's like, And the thing is, when you're working in this business, you can justify it because it's like, well, I'm just looking for some good real ideas, just want to check out this. I just want to check out that, and before you know it, it's 11 o'clock and you were supposed to be in your studio at 9. So, there's pitfalls.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to deal with the same kind of things that I do, in that we both have chronic illnesses. Like, we have to be very careful of like how our energy goes, and managing that alongside the demands of a business and maintaining a creative practice as well. Is that something that you've had to figure out ways to deal with?
Yes, absolutely. And so but you do, I guess you just do. And a part of connecting with people and building a community of people that want to work with you and do your classes and hang out and all of that is showing up as you are, wherever you are and whatever is going on in your life, and of course there are some boundaries around that, but there's also like, I'm not afraid to say when I'm not feeling well, because what I found is that whenever I do that, I get 10 people reach out to me and say, thank you so much for saying that. I've been dealing with X, Y, Z. And it really makes me feel better to know that even, when your life looks sparkly, that something is going on, do you know what I mean? Like, it just makes us all be able to relate to each other in a better way. So I think it was 2 years ago, I was really, really in the throes of a really bad ulcerative colitis flare. And, my husband was away. He was doing the PCT trail in America for 3 months.
Oh, nice.
And I was just sick as anything. And so because I was the only one in the house, I just decided to put newspapers down on the coffee table in the lounge room, to put Netflix and YouTube art videos on, and to bring my paints in and my sketchbooks and everything, basically made the lounge room my studio. And even though I didn't feel well, I had the fire on, it was winter, and I would just kind of play with whatever was in front of me. And, and even in doing that, I was sharing those moments as well sometimes, it's like, oh, look, I just discovered this, or I just went on a shopping spree on Amazon because I don't feel well, and this is what just came to the door, So you're still sharing your life even when you're not feeling very good. And I think that people really appreciate that, and it does help to build your community as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes you relatable, doesn't it? Like, just showing that you are a human being having a human experience. Like, it's so relatable.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
One of the things that I love most about your work is how joyful it is. Like, it's exuberant and it's vibrant and it's full of this just pure joy. And you have this kind of sense of positivity in everything that you do. So I'm curious, kind of, how do you deal with times when things aren't going so well, when you're not feeling that joy and that positivity? Like, what do you do then?
Yeah. That's been a huge, it's been a huge learning curve, really. Like, I sometimes look back on, because I've been doing this now since 2012, I think was when I was first on Facebook. And sometimes I'll look back at younger me posts, and this is just normal part of life, right? And I'll go, gosh, who was that sparkly, optimistic, positive person? It's like, and sometimes I'll be like, geez, you didn't know what was coming, did you? And so I think in spite of it, I probably used to be the person that would send somebody like positive memes when they were feeling down and tell them to try some alternative remedy and whatever. And now when I get that, I'm like, no, you don't. I've tried every alternative remedy. But anyway, so yes, we grow, we change, but underneath it all, I think it is important to still stay hopeful, to try and ride those waves when they come, to go easy and to give yourself some grace when it happens. You know, I've realized now that like there are going to be times when, you know, if a flare starts, I'm immediately, you know, I can be totally up, and then if that happens, I'm like way down again, and then I have to pull myself up out of that. So it's not I don't think it's intrinsic. I think it's just something that you have to work at. And there are myriads of moments every day that are miraculous. I mean, just the fact that we are living, breathing, and sitting right here talking is a miracle, you know. And so, so I just think to focus on those small, sweet spots when things get really heavy. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, it's finding the magic in the ordinary moments, isn't it? It's just like being aware all the time that, like you say, this is a miracle.
For sure.
It's all magic.
Yeah. I think, what I was going to say also, and I've only just started thinking about this over the last couple of years. My youngest daughter works for me 25 hours a week, so almost full time. I couldn't do it without her. And she and I talk a lot about psychology and about all kinds of things. And she had brought to my attention a couple of years ago that she thought that I should maybe go and get a diagnosis of ADHD. And she's super organized, super focused, and I'm like flitting all over the place. And I think that's maybe also one of the reasons that I can kind of stay a bit optimistic, is that I just forget things really quickly and I move on to other things. You know, I'm just always like, okay, what's
you know, I can relate to that.
It's a gift.
So obviously you are a very public figure. You're very much kind of out there. You've had this amazingly successful career. And your art has been, you know, the core of that, like the backbone of that. And I'm curious, do you have art that you just make for yourself, that is just your sort of private, I don't know, processing art? Or does everything you make get kind of folded into the business?
I would say 95, maybe 90% gets folded into the business. But in the last year or so, I've started a sketchbook practice. And so it's taken me 20 years to do that. For whatever reason, I was really scared to get into a sketchbook. I don't know why. So I started following lots of illustrators on Instagram, people that I love their work, and the same kind of free, playful, colorful, different but similar energy than mine. And so I've started learning from other people and making the sketchbook less precious. And so I guess that's been a huge epiphany and change for me. So sometimes I'll show my sketchbooks like on my YouTube channel and stuff like that, but mostly, you know, it's not like every time I do something, I run out and go, look, look, look. So, and then it's not saleable either. So that's fantastic because it's not a commodity. It's just in that way, it's just for me to experiment and try new things. But, you know, if I'm working on canvases or paper, usually I'll film, because then I can either, if something good happens, I can use it as content, or I might be able to tie it into a class. So you're always kind of multitasking and thinking about, you know, some days though, I do feel like there are days when I just feel like, you know what, I want to just be alone and just do this for me. So, but they're rare. Those days are rare. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. How about you? Do you paint for yourself?
Oh gosh, I love this. Well, yeah, I think that I used to be an illustrator. So when I first kind of started out doing art professionally, I did it for other people essentially. So I was creative to other people's specifications, and I found it completely exhausting, and it burnt me out, and it completely destroyed my personal kind of creative practice. So this time around, when I was, you know, decided it was time to be an artist in public again, my kind of core rule was I'm only going to make the art that I want to make, the stuff that comes out of me naturally. So essentially, like, all the art that I make now is for myself first, and it comes through. What I'm trying to do now is I'm looking for the people who really resonate with that, and I'm kind of building a community of people who can see what I'm doing and give me those kind of Me Too moments. And that means that a lot of the work that I do happens sort of not in public, because it's me sort of excavating my own sort of personal stuff. And one of the things that I've struggled with is finding the balance between, what do I share and what do I keep to myself? And how to kind of marry those two things in a way that still feels authentic and still gives people that kind of behind the scenes thing, but also keeps the kind of the creative thing like precious to me, and doesn't disrupt the flow of what I'm doing.
Yes.
So it's a really interesting kind of, this, like being an artist on the internet, there's so much kind of, there's so much kind of expectation of people want to see, like, how do you do it? What are you doing? How does it all kind of fit together? But then when you're doing that, when you're kind of creating content at the same time as creating art, you're also sort of taking yourself out of those kind of intuitive flow states in a way.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I guess when I do sit down, if I'm filming, it's usually because I've got something in mind. So like the last 2 days, because I'm just getting back into studio practice, I haven't filmed anything. I've just been having a lovely time out there. The works will be for sale when they're done, but I've been exploring some new things. And so, I guess you just find a balance. You just have to muddle through it until you find what's right for you,
Yeah. It's a really interesting, it's a really interesting balance. It's a really interesting challenge as well, like bringing people along for the journey, but also I'm always wary of sort of we call it like letting the air out of ideas and things. So like finding when to share stuff is it's a trip. Being an artist in public is a real trip.
For sure. I see some artists online that like are specifically sharing, they must have a great camera setup and everything. They're sharing like things every day that are to do with their process and to do with how the paint's going on, all that type of thing. I'm much more sporadic and spontaneous. Like, so for me, it's just like I might think to myself, I haven't actually filmed anything for a bit, so I'm going to hold my iPhone in this hand while I just do a couple of strokes, and then 5 minutes later I'll hold it again. But when I put it together, it looks pretty cool, and then you see the finished thing. It's like, whoa, okay. So I'm not very organized in that way at all, but I've become adept at creating good content quickly, I guess, for reels and things like that, without having it take over my whole process and take over the whole studio, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, you're so good at that. You're so good at kind of just letting people into what you're doing. It's brilliant. So kind of leading on from that, like how do you balance your creative needs and your kind of need to make art and be in the studio and create things with the needs of your business and the marketing and the, fiddling with, I don't know, Facebook ads and website updates and the promotional stuff that needs to happen?
Yeah. So bottom line is it's almost impossible to do it all yourself. But when you are starting out, and probably for the first maybe 6 years of my business, I was doing it all mostly myself, probably not very well and probably all over the place. And actually I was doing too much and I burnt out. And so when our youngest was old enough, she started working with me. I did have an assistant working with me for a couple of years before that as well. So CC handles most of the emails except for ones that are personal. She does all the website stuff. She edits my videos. She builds the classroom website. So she's pretty much doing a lot of customer management, all that type of stuff. She's doing a lot of things that would have pulled me away from painting. So our ultimate aim is to get me only doing personal emails. I do social media and painting, and then she's handling all of the background stuff. And my business completely changed when I got a coach during COVID. So up until that time, everything had been organic. I had not spent any money on the business at all. And I knew that we were going to be in for a bit of a rough ride. You know, I couldn't get out and do workshops anymore. We were all isolated. And so I hired a coach. It was like, I'd had to, it was really scary for me because, as I said, I hadn't spent any money on the business. And I hired a coach. It was $7,000 for 6 months. I thought I would die, you know, just like, oh my God. And she changed everything for me. Like within the first couple of months, she made me really understand that you actually did have to spend money to grow a business to a different level. And she convinced me to try Facebook ads, but not by myself, not fiddling around like I had tried to do before. And so I now have like a team that I pay who do all the Facebook ads. The expenses are crazy compared to what I used to have, but the business has gone to a different level. And so that was a massive learning curve for me. And I think I don't know, you know, the only reason I took the leap was because I just had a successful launch that I did organically. And I thought, I've got this spare money and I'm going to basically gamble this $12,000 that I had sitting there. And if I lose it, I lose it. And if this goes well and it works, then it works. And we had an amazing year in 2020, like the little class that just went bonkers around the world. And that was all because I had worked with this coach and he convinced me to do ads. And so, you know, but that hasn't been easy either. That hasn't been an easy transition because I kind of fought for a while against what I felt like was moving away from my own authentic voice and having to do the things that you have to do to be more salesy and to have the sales page that's long and all of that kind of stuff. Like I really, really resisted that for a couple of years. And then I thought, you know what, just get over yourself. Like it's not, like the people that love you are still going to love you. You know, not everybody's like going, oh my God, Tracy's doing this now, you know. So I just, I just went with it and decided instead I could be someone that could encourage women to like grow and to do things outside of their comfort zones and to not always have to be seen as being, oh, you know, like, do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, we have such a tendency to just, I don't know, hide our light, you know, and defer to everybody else and you know, I'm doing a little thing over here, like don't look, I'm sorry. But having the it's almost audacity in this kind of cultural climate that we live in to as a woman to step up and say, you know what, I'm really good at this and I'm really enjoying it and everyone should know about it.
Right, exactly. And that's where I had to get my mind to. I had to like get out of the, oh, what are people going to think about me if I start doing these, you know, salesy, wordy things, and instead think, what can I bring to the world and how many people can I reach with what I'm doing? And, you know, even now, like every time I do a retreat or a workshop, like I just had a workshop here in our little town. I had somebody come from Sweden. I had 2 women come from the United States. We live in, you know, this tiny town. And at the retreats that I'm running, I always hear people that tell me that, like, they'll say things like, that little class that I bought from you during COVID saved my life or changed my life, or I've become a different person because it introduced me to creativity and enabled me to feel confident about that. It let me feel like I could actually do it, you know. So when you get that kind of validation from people about what your work has meant to their life, then the more I can get out there, the better, you know.
That's amazing. That's so inspiring. So inspiring. So you're moving towards this kind of ideal. I love the idea of breeding your own workforce, by the way. That's genius.
It's perfect.
Fantastic. Wish I'd thought of that years ago. So you're moving towards this kind of situation where you're able to spend more and more time kind of on the art and less time on the kind of day-to-day minutiae of running the business. So at the moment, like, what is a typical day or week? It's probably more accurate. What does that look like for you?
So usually in the morning, I try and check in with Cece, our daughter, because she works from 9 until 1 for me. And so if there's anything we need to talk about, we'll check in at that time and go over things. And then I'll usually sit on social media and answer personal things and maybe make some reels. Go through my camera roll and delete photos and from the trip, like all the little, so many little things, right, that have to be done. I'm also running, I also have a YouTube channel that we're trying to post to every week now. So, kind of trying to schedule things, filming, that type of thing. I had Patreon for a while, but I'm letting that go. So I had to really take a look at how I was spreading myself too thin, which I have a tendency to do. And I had paused Patreon while we were away. And so that just felt better. And I knew that I was kind of taking my energy from other areas and giving it to Patreon. And so I just needed to pull back on that. So you just always making little decisions, and there's so many arms to the business. It basically, for me, painting time is usually afternoon, and I kind of get my most energy like between about 4 and 6. So I can have a really good spurt of creativity in my studio at that time, and then have to be pulled into the house for dinner type of thing. And after that, I'm an early to bed person, so early to rise, early to bed. So it's kind of. And then, just family and stuff as well. So I really feel like I'm probably only working, about 25 hours a week at the business now. And that's great because I'm also helping my daughter with the babies and all that type of thing. And that's where I really would like to be. Obviously when I'm traveling, and doing retreats, I'm on, 24/7 with the groups. But I'm turning 60 next year. And so I'm not winding back, but I'm trying to get to the point where I can work smarter and not harder. And I'm getting there. So
yeah, it's all about what your priorities are in any kind of given season of your life, isn't it? And sometimes you're nose to the grindstone, working, and sometimes it's time to reap the rewards and enjoy the fruits of your labor.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, like the first probably 6-7 years of the business was like, go, say yes to everything, be switched on all the time. And now we've just bought ourselves a little camper van. So we kind of trying to get away for a couple of days here and there and go camp. And so, it's a nice time. It's a really nice time.
Oh, I love that. That's lovely. So when you are in the studio, let's have a chat about your kind of making process. Like, do you have any sort of rituals or like special routines or anything that you do, or are you very much just kind of get in, be spontaneous, jump in, do whatever?
I'm a sometimes ritual, sometimes not person. So if I think about it, then I'll sometimes get some incense going and put some nice music on. I like to have music. I like to sing while I'm painting.
I love
but
that.
It's not like but it's not like I must do this before I can do this type of thing. There are days I go out there and I'm like, I really need to clean this up before I can get started. And there are other days when I'm quite happy to go in there and just jump into the mess and keep going. So I think it just depends on what your mood is day to day. So I just go with it however I'm feeling.
And how do you decide what you're going to do on any given day? Like, what's your sort of inspiration to creation pipeline look like?
Yeah. So I think my biggest hurdle these days is too much inspiration, too much choice, too many possibilities. Yeah. So, and I have to really work with that because you can sit and look through your half-finished works, and a whole day will go by and you haven't done anything. So sometimes I'll just choose an image, like a photo that I took while we were overseas, and think to myself, what am I going to do with that? Spend some time on my sketchbook. Other times I'll pull out canvases that have been like sitting half done for 6 months, and then I'll just do something kind of radically different on it, just throw some fluorescent paint on it because I don't know what else to do. And then sometimes just that act of making that bold move and switching things up can actually change the energy. I did that this afternoon. I had a painting that I started at the workshop last weekend, and it was very dreamy and calm and watery, and I could have just kept going in that direction. But today I was feeling a bit more like vibrant and I was feeling fluorescent pink today, right? And so the first thing I did was just kind of squirt some pink. And at first it's like, oh gosh, what have I done? Because that wasn't the direction it was heading in. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to dab some more color here. And then I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And so I got into the actual just feeling the paint without even knowing what it was going to be. And then suddenly I had a cat sitting in a garden. And so sometimes it's just like the painting will just come. Other times I'll work on things. If I'm not feeling that way, other times I'll go, you know what? I just need to start painting again. So I'm going to do something in this series. I know how this goes. I know how to do step 1, step 2, step 3 in this series. So just to get into the throes of it again. So it just, I don't know. Do you get that too? Like sometimes you're really spontaneous and other times you're like, I need to be methodical today.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many different kind of elements to the work that I do. Sometimes it's like I'm going to practice like doing something very technical. Other times it's like I just need to get my hands in some paint and like be one with the color,
Yeah. That's right.
And sometimes I have a very clear vision for a painting, and other times it's just like we're just gonna play with color combinations and shapes and form and kind of see what emerges. And it's you never know what you're going to get, really.
And there's so much inspiration out there as well. Just this trip in Europe. I mean, you're in Europe. I don't know how you handle it. There's so much art everywhere, and so we had been to lots of galleries, and we've seen so many of the great artists that I love, and Matisse and Chagall and Dufy and Picasso, and came home with all of these things in my head. Sometimes I will actually take out a Picasso and think to myself, how did he, and actually do a little study, how did he what was the first layers? I could kind of get that effect if I printed something, and so I'll kind of move myself through learning by actually emulating, which artists have done for years and years and years. And always learn something new in that process, right?
Yeah. I think that's the thing that I love most about making art and being an artist is the fact that it's this constant journey of discovery. Like you're always learning something new, and it's so exciting. Like just the process of, I don't know, things that you think and things that you've been doing for years. Like you do something different one day and you come up with something completely, a new effect or a new color or a new something, and it's just
I feel like
magic.
Exactly. And I feel like you just have to stay really curious all the time, and that's what gets you into these discoveries, and looking at other people's art is one way to do that. It's like, ooh, what is that? Did they scrape that on, or did they spray that? Did they throw something into it? So you always see artists at galleries. They're the ones that are like right close up, like just trying to see how somebody did
right up against it.
The museum guard is like, get away from the painting. So, and it's a great adventure. I remember listening to a podcast a couple of years ago, and there was this, I don't remember his name, but he was a musician. He was in his 80s, and he had been playing music in symphony orchestras his whole life. And he said, it was Christy Tippett. Have you listened to On Being? It's a fabulous podcast. But anyway, he said, he said at 84, he felt like he was just beginning to understand music after having played in all of these symphonies. And I thought that was the most beautiful thing, because sometimes I feel like I know this I know this much, a fingertip about art. I know what I know and what I can do, but I'm constantly amazed at what other people can do, and so excited, like you, to learn new things.
Yeah, it's astonishing. There are some really incredible creative people in the world. Like I spend so much of my life just in awe of what people are capable of. Like, so if there's anybody listening to this who is interested in making their creativity their full-time thing, like if they want to take their art full-time, or if they want to start teaching or anything like that, what advice would you give them?
I can only give advice from my own personal perspective and journey. And I think what I see a lot is people with fabulous ideas and lots of talent, wanting to create workshops and classes. And I've seen it over and over again where they'll spend so much time creating and then put it out there and then get crickets because they don't have a community yet. And so for me, that building the community was intrinsic to the success that came later on. And I didn't actually do it intentionally. I didn't even know why I was building the community at the time. I was working full time at the high school. I was doing my kids' art classes. I didn't have an intention when I started that group to actually go out and teach workshops. So it was all, as I said, quite organic. So we built the community as friends, creative friends. And I think that, it wouldn't have been the same had I not done that first. And I just really couldn't emphasize more, like if you want to have an audience, whether you're painting to sell or whether you want to do workshops or online classes, you really need to spend some time, quite a lot of time, cultivating that community first, getting your following. I think it's so important. Getting a mailing list, doing a fun newsletter every week, like putting that time and effort in. That would be my biggest advice. And the second would be do the work as far as creatively, as far as painting, sketching, learning yourself so that you're always coming up with new ideas, so that you're growing as an artist. Sometimes I see people will take a class of mine and they'll try one lesson one time and then it didn't work out. Oh, I failed at that lesson. I'm like, do it another 10 times, do it 20 times, do the same lesson 20 times, and then tell me how you feel about number 10, number 15, number 20. Like every single one of them will be different. You might even get a whole series of different things, or you might go a little different direction each time, but you can't just do something one time and then master it, it's just not. So do the work, build the community, I think are the two biggest things that I could say to anybody for advice.
Excellent advice. I would give the same advice. Yeah, community. I mean, my background is in community building, so like it makes so much difference when you have a group of people who are ready to receive what you have to offer. Like you build those relationships and you put that time in, and it will pay back. I have people who are still with me from 10, 15 years ago when I was doing the Gratitude Project, which was like my first kind of public art foray. And they've been with me through my illustration career, when I was doing marketing, community building. They're still with me now. And those relationships have led to so many opportunities and so many like magical things. It's not about looking for people to buy stuff from you. It's about what you were saying, like building a community of friends, of peers, of people who are in community with you. Like it's not about building an audience at the beginning. It's about really connecting with people.
That's the thing, that's really important that you say that, because it's not like there's a lot of kind of cutthroat marketing out there. And it's not like you're going into this saying, I need to gather this community because they are a commodity. It's not that at all. It's, you're building community of like-minded people, people that you can align with. And then those people will become your biggest supporters. If they love you and they love what you do and, and you've created some memories together, they're the ones that are going to go out and tell people about what you're doing. And that's, it's a beautiful thing.
So My dear, thank you so much for this. It's been an incredible conversation. It's so lovely to talk to you finally face to face. Can you tell us, where can people find you on the internet? Where can they come and absorb your wonderful art and your wonderful wisdom?
Oh, well, the place I show up most is Instagram, and that's just under my name, Tracy Verdugo. And then YouTube, I'm doing something almost every week now. So again, Tracy Verdugo Art. And then my website, tracyverdugo.com, has all of my online classes if you want to come and hang out and do some classes with me as well. Next year, I have a few spots left in Portugal and Sicily. So if anybody would like to come and paint somewhere amazing with me, that's open as well.
Oh, what a fantastic opportunity. Really, really wonderful. All of those links will be in the show notes for anyone who's interested. So you can come over to the show notes and find all of Tracy's links there. And do go and become a part of her community, because she's absolutely wonderful. What she's doing in the world is spectacular. So Tracy, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate your energy, your positivity that you're putting out into the world. I think it's absolutely magnificent what you're doing. So thank you so much for sharing that with us today.
Thank you. It's lovely chatting with you, and I hope we can catch up when I'm in Copenhagen next year.